Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we are diving into a really fascinating philosophical framework, one that's designed to take you from a place of personal stagnation and completely flip the script toward infinite prosperity. In today's explainer, we're going to unpack some core concepts from Ryuho Okawa's teachings, specifically focusing on a pivotal lecture delivered back on October 9th, 2011, all about prosperity thinking. We're going to look at how shifting your internal worldview can theoretically alter not just your own life, but the entire trajectory of a nation. So, if you've ever felt like your potential is just sort of capped by the circumstances around you, this is going to be incredibly thought-provoking. Let's get right into it.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the law of attracting prosperity, breaking what's called shrinking thinking, spiritual self-awakening, unleashing infinite power, and then we'll wrap up by looking at Japan as a world model.
Okay, part 1, the law of attracting prosperity. Let's set the foundation for this whole framework.
So our source material today centers on Ryuho Okawa's work Prosperity Thinking, and the text proposes a pretty bold premise that understanding certain laws of prosperity actually has the power to fundamentally alter the future of an entire nation. The core idea is that wealth and success, they aren't just random strokes of luck, and they actually aren't purely the result of just grinding away at mechanical labor either. Instead, they're actively attracted by a very specific, limitless type of thinking. The author argues that when you align your thoughts with spiritual abundance, it acts like a giant magnet for real-world prosperity. It really sets the stage for a philosophy where your internal mind directly dictates your external reality. Basically, the invisible world of your thoughts is the primary engine for tangible, material success.
Moving on to part 2, breaking shrinking thinking. Before we can reach all that prosperity, we have to identify exactly what's blocking our path. The text points to a really pervasive roadblock, calling it the shrinking mindset. And this isn't just about an individual feeling a bit down or having a bad day. It describes a profound state of collective stagnation. We're talking about widespread pessimism, a hyperfocus on limits, and really crucially here, a modern prejudice against spiritual or religious concepts. According to that October 2011 lecture, looking at the world through a purely materialistic lens is inherently limiting. Think about it. If a society believes that physical matter and finite resources are literally all that exist, that society naturally goes on the defensive, right? They adopt a restrictive posture. This shrinking mindset traps people and even entire nations like Japan in a vicious cycle of small-scale thinking, cutting them off completely from true expansive growth.
You can really see the stark contrast between these two worldviews right here. On the left, that shrinking mindset is hyper-focused on limits. It constantly expects the worst, and it clings to a strictly materialistic view that honestly harbors deep prejudice against the unseen. It's totally a mindset of containment. But then, look at prosperity thinking on the right. It demands a complete 180. It requires an intense focus on infinite potential, unwavering optimism, and deliberately breaking out of those self-imposed boundaries to embrace large-scale thinking. The source material is very clear about this. You can't just casually straddle the line between these two modes of thought. To fully access the boundless potential of prosperity thinking, society has to entirely discard those restrictive, materialistic limitations.
All right, part 3, spiritual self-awakening. So how exactly do we transition from that shrinking mindset over to true prosperity? Let's talk about the tipping point.
Now this is where it gets really fascinating. The framework argues that true awakening doesn't mean you have to abandon the physical world or go live on a mountain somewhere. Instead, it happens the exact moment your self-awareness becomes just slightly more than 50% spiritual. Just 51%. When that internal balance tips, when you start viewing yourself as 51% a spiritual being and 49% a physical or material being, that tiny majority fundamentally alters your entire operational baseline. Crossing that 50% threshold is the absolute critical catalyst. It means that, sure, you still acknowledge and interact with the physical world, but your primary identity, the core of who you actually consider yourself to be, is now anchored in something limitless rather than something finite.
And crossing that 50% threshold theoretically triggers a massive chain reaction. According to the teachings, it completely transforms your worldview from one of scarcity to one of absolute abundance. Because you now recognize that your identity extends way beyond your physical body, the limitations of the physical world just suddenly lose their grip on you. You stop seeing yourself as a finite resource bound by earthly rules, and you start seeing yourself as an entity plugged into limitless possibilities. On a practical level, the text suggests that shedding this finite resource mindset literally eliminates fear and hesitation in your daily life. I mean, when you're no longer terrified of running out of your limited resources, you are completely free to act with bold, unprecedented confidence.
Okay, part 4, unleashing infinite power.
Once that internal perspective shifts, how does that translate into actionable potential?
Think of this progression as a blueprint for success. It builds compounding momentum, moving straight from internal change to external, real-world impact. Step 1 is doing the hard work to actively discard that shrinking mindset and societal prejudice we talked about. Clearing the mind then leads to Step 2, hitting that vital tipping point and awakening to your spiritual self at greater than 50%. Once those internal victories are locked in, Step 3 naturally follows. You unleash a power that was previously just suppressed by doubt and materialism. And finally, Step 4. This all culminates in the real world, using that newly unleashed power to advance massive future development. It's this seamless flow from personal, spiritual realization all the way to large-scale societal progress.
Honestly, the core thesis here is just so empowering. By firmly establishing this spiritual identity, the author argues that you can tap into an unlimited power that is already naturally inherent within humanity. And that's a really crucial distinction, right? This isn't about going out and acquiring power from the outside world or learning some secret trick or hoarding resources. It's literally about unlocking what is already there. The text asserts that human beings fundamentally possess this infinite capability by their very nature. It just lies dormant, totally suppressed by that shrinking mindset. It's just waiting for the right perspective, prosperity thinking, to unlock the door and set it free.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Japan as a World Model. We're going to zoom way out now and look at the macro geopolitical vision.
Because this philosophy definitely doesn't stop at personal wealth. It scales all the way up to a grand global mission, with a very specific focus on Japan. The text asserts that Japan actually has a distinct historical mission to overcome its current national crises, and by extension, broader global crises. Why Japan? Well, the text views overcoming Japan's deeply entrenched economic and social stagnation as the ultimate proof of concept for this entire spiritual framework. The goal is for the nation to refuse that stagnation and deliberately carve out a trajectory of continued prosperity. By pulling this off, Japan is meant to present a brand new model to the global community. It would show the world exactly how a nation can thrive when it's guided by these specific spiritual principles, using the teachings of happy science as the central pillar for massive future development and resolving global challenges.
As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty vital question to chew on. What is actually dictating your daily worldview? Is it the perceived limits of your physical reality, or is it the infinite potential of a spiritually grounded perspective? Because according to this text, your answer to that question doesn't just shape what you do today. It shapes your ultimate prosperity, and maybe the very future of the world around you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.